Hi everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Barbara Walton and I've been asked to give this week's thought for the week. I hope you can bear with me because I've never done a recording before and I've never really done a talk like this one either, so please be patient. Given that I'm an accountant by training and support the ECB treasurer, it's probably only natural that I've been asked to talk about finances and giving. But I want to start out slightly differently and remind us about how generous God is with us. It starts right at the very beginning with Adam. God creates the world, then creates Adam out of the dirt, out of the world that he created. But he gives him something special. God breathes his breath into Adam. His breath. How amazing is that? It's God's breath that enables us to breathe. God then goes further and gives Adam and Eve, gives us everything on earth to steward it and to care for it, but to use it as we see fit. He gives us the choice on how to use the resources that we have been given, gives us the free will to decide what kind of a relationship we're going to have with him, but also with his creation. I'm sure you know how the story goes. Sadly, we fail as humans again and again and again. And God forgives us and gives us another chance to rebuild our relationship with him. The stories in the Bible remind us that we're not unique in our failings. Adam and Eve, the people at the time of Noah, the Israelites in the Exodus from Egypt. Wow, the Israelites in their Exodus from Egypt. It only took them 3 months after God had sent plagues that didn't touch them, and then parted the Red Sea so that they could escape slavery and the army that was chasing them, for them to start moaning and groaning about how rotten things were and how God had forgotten them. Well, it's been 4 months for us now in lockdown. How many of us have started moaning a bit? I know I have occasionally. But God, he was so gracious. He sent manna from heaven for them each morning to eat, and quails in the evening for their dinner, to remind them of his goodness. Skipping over their story a bit, because it's a bit long, he then gave the Israelites the 10 Commandments, of which the first 2 I'm going to read. The first is, "You shall have no other gods before me." And the second, "You shall not make for yourself an idol in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth below, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sins of the fathers to the 3rd and 4th generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments." 1,000 generations. The book of Deuteronomy in chapter 11 goes on to say, "So if you faithfully obey the commands I am giving you today, to love the Lord your God, to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul, then I will send rain on your land in its season, both autumn and spring rain, so that you may gather in your grain and your new wine and your oil. I will provide grass in the field for your cattle, and you will eat and be satisfied." We have a gracious and generous God who always gives us sufficient. It goes on to talk about tithing, giving back to God from the first fruits of our labors. This is about honoring God with our finances and remembering that he is first in our lives, not money. In the New Testament, Jesus talks about it very differently. In Mark 12, verses 41 to 44, he talks about a poor widow, and it says, "Jesus sat down opposite the place where the offerings were put and watched the crowd putting their money into the temple treasury. Many rich people threw in large amounts, but a poor widow came and put in 2 very small copper coins, worth only a fraction of a penny. Calling his disciples to him, Jesus said, 'I tell you the truth, This poor widow has put more into the treasury than all the others. They all gave out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put everything in, all she had to live on. In Luke 16, he says, "Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much, and whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much." So if you have not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? No servant can serve two masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. In Acts, after Jesus' death, it talks about giving in the same breath as it says, "Everyone was filled with awe, and many wonders and miraculous signs were done. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved." So here is my challenge to each one of us. Do we trust that our God is a big God who is in charge of everything? Do we want to see miraculous signs and wonders happening in even greater numbers? Are we willing to pray to God about our finances and really ask Him how much we should give into His kingdom work? Our church finances have a huge, we'll call it a faith gap each year, just to cover the basics of having a vicar, a church building, as well as supporting the various different ministries that we support. With the coronavirus and not being able to rent out the church or have the church cafe running at full pace, the gap between our regular income and our everyday expenses has grown even bigger. As individuals, God calls us to bless Him with the first fruits of our labors. My challenge to each one of you is to pray and ask God what of your finances you can give to God's work through ECB. For some of you, it may be increasing what you already give regularly by a meal out a month or by tickets to a theatre production. For those of you who don't give, it may be the start of a tithing journey where God challenges you this year to give the cost of a cup of coffee out a week. For students and children, it might be a willingness to give part of your allowance. As the widow's mite shows, everything is valuable in God's eyes, and it is those who are giving sacrificially who are choosing to give, but that means that they can't afford something else in their budget or can only afford a lesser thing in their budget. It is these who God blesses the most. If we all work together as church members, we can close this faith gap. It's only the members of the church who give to the church. So it is only all of us working together that can close the gap. It's through us that God will provide for the church, and through that we will see miraculous signs and wonders in the work of the church. So I challenge you, and I challenge me, will you give all your finances into God's hands and see what He is calling you to give?